I think the vast majority of wines out there are products, not brands. My definition of a brand is something that transcends the actual product. Like, it's more than just this right here. It's an idea that's bigger than any given product.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today in beautiful Southern California. About to have a conversation with Courtney O'Brien. Introductions in just a minute. Hey, have a listen to a show I just put out. Mark Lafleur, he is a portfolio specialist in wine. And we never at the Wine of the Month Club ever suggested you invest in wine as a financial means. However, it has worked lately, so he is a specialist in that. Listen to him. But not while we're here to have a conversation with Courtney O'Brien, who is the founder, president, chief bottle washer of Outlier Initiative. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I know I'm not trying to belittle people when I say it's the chief bottle washer, but I know what it's like to be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
And do your own thing, right?
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
As it being. I've been following what you're doing on LinkedIn, and some really creative conversations are emerging. And then I noticed your background in corporate America, which has its great value, I think, when you come to the table, particularly in synergistic businesses. But tell me about that a little bit. You were with Coca-Cola, and we talked a little history before about my relationship with Coca-Cola. But
Yeah.
was that your first big corporate job?
I've been in corporate my entire adult life. So right out of college, I went into management consulting. Then I went big management consulting, working for huge companies. Then I went back to grad school. Immediately after that, I've been in corporate beverage for 23 years after that. So Danone was the first global powerhouse that I was with, on Evian, reporting up through Paris, then Coca-Cola, then E&J Gallo.
Let me ask you then, because I was at corporate America, but when I went to college, I'm like, I am not going there. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was a businessman from Cairo. I go, I am not going to go to corporate America. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And what did I do? I went right to corporate America. And I'm so happy I did, because the lessons you learn there are, they're refined, they're polished, They come with some bureaucracy, but they certainly come with time-tested reality. Is that your experience as well?
I did not want to be an entrepreneur.
Oh.
I was like the rule, which is so weird because it's not my personality, but I wanted to go to the best college I could get into. I wanted the best job when I got out to teach me everything I didn't know. I really viewed that as a continuation of my education. So that's why I went into management consulting. You get to try a little bit of everything. After which business school was easy, honestly, after I'd plowed through management consulting. But yeah, I remember getting a job offer pretty early in my career to be like head of marketing for some tiny little company. And I'm like, me? I'm not ready to be head of marketing. I want to still be learning from people. That's like half of my salary, essentially.
Right.
Like, I got the rest of my life to do things my way and be in charge. And I am somebody that gets in charge pretty naturally. But yeah, I really viewed it as learning for many, many years. It was a really good race.
What was it then that, you were in beverage with Coca-Cola, obviously. And we'll talk about that in a second, about sort of that idea of transitioning from soda to the wine industry. But, what was it that attracted you to start in the beverage trade? Because it is unique.
Yeah. I mean, I was supposed to go work for ConAgra, their Southern California, Orange County operations. I had a job lined up after business school at UCLA. And they reneged.
I'm sorry. I forgot it was UCLA.
It was UCLA,
All
right? We have the USC going.
All right, we'll continue. Don't worry about it.
And they reneged on all of our offers, all of the MBAs coming from UCLA that year, the week of graduation. So about 7 of us lost our offers.
Wow. That's interesting.
And I really wanted to start in food and beverage. I was just getting into brand management and marketing. It was a career changer. I had an offer to go work for a video game company. I also had an offer to go work for Disney, where I did my summer internship. And I didn't want to do those. I really wanted to start in food and beverage because I was convinced that that was the best training for brand management. And I wanted, at age very young, 26, 27, when I graduated business school, the best foundational training. Because I thought the smartest people had that. So I was in LA. I pursued what I could find right out of business school in June, which isn't very much, with no experience doing that. And I ended up getting a contract role with Evian, who had their water operations in Pasadena at the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't
And
know that.
so it was not supposed to be full time. It was really just contract. They are not in the business of training in the US in the water business. They have a tiny team. But consequently, I got the ability to do absolutely everything. I ran a large part of their marketing and my fingers in everything that they were doing in the US. And it did end up being permanent for 4 years or something like that, until I
Wow.
went to Coca-Cola. Yeah.
That's interesting because those are big brands, and I suppose if you're going to bite off getting into the beverage industry, go. I mean, just go right, just go right to the top.
Well,
When it comes to the
there just
brand, like
weren't as
why mess
many
around?
back then. There weren't
Huh?
as many back then. I mean, the soda shelf was Coke and Pepsi and a little bit of 7 Up. I mean, the beverage world now is so much more finely diced than it was then.
That's kind of interesting thought. It is rather boutique-ish now, and then, however, what's it called? Just sold for $1 billion,
Yeah.
and I think it's not unusual, particularly in the wine business as well. And we'll talk about that transition now, but there's to brand yourself in the wine trade and to try and get shelf space and try to get a house pour.
Yep.
It's a little bit different than soda at that point. But
Yep.
man, what an opportunity for you to learn the fundamentals of branding, to be with a brand like Evian.
That's
and
why, I mean, that was the
Coca-Cola.
biggest joke, right? Like, how better to learn marketing than to go market water?
Yeah, right. Well, who would have thought? I mean, who would have thought that water, like my wife won't drink anything but bottled water
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
the way it is.
Yep. And this was the beginning. This was back when everyone would say, oh, Evian, if you spell that backwards, it's naive, right? So, I mean, it was like Americans pushing back on there being a bottled water industry. And why don't we just all drink out of our taps? It was good enough for my mom. And this was, so this had all happened before I went and worked for them, where who was like Michael Douglas in whatever movie, he goes up to the bar, he's like a recovering alcoholic, and he's like, I'll have an Evian, please. And he asks for it by name. And that was kind of the original adult alternative beverage of, he's not asking for tap water. He's asking for a branded premium thing he can stand around and look good drinking.
That's
Heavy
it
on
was
celebrity endorsement back then.
that's pretty amazing because Evian for a long time, and I don't know that it carries that moniker now, and certainly this would apply to the wine trade, was considered sort of an aristocratic
Oh, very luxury.
version of water.
Yep.
And then, of course, all the other brands came out. But
Right.
for a long time,
Oh, yeah.
I drink Evian.
It was very premium and luxury. Absolutely. And
So
they
you
used,
did that.
I know that was done before me. But yes, I definitely carried that on. And we did, so we were both a global CPG brand and a luxury one. So, I had the opportunity to go to the spa in France and to see the source of the spring, and which is available for all French citizens, and
Wow.
giant swimming pool filled with Evian, but yet running 2 huge national retail promotions per year and creating new bottle molds. And I did the full brand
Wow.
management.
What
Yep,
a great experience.
it was.
You said the springs in France when we were in Napa not that long. Well, it wasn't recently, but it was one of my earlier trips. And Crystal Geyser had been running these ads on the paper, on the radio, as if you were down the street, our neighborhood water people come visit us. So I did. And it said no visitors on the wall. And I thought, wow,
That's classic.
I'm like, this is great. I drive all the way
That's
up to
awesome.
Calistoga to go see Crystal Geyser.
Yeah, Calistoga.
So you transition out of corporate, and we're going to talk about sort of the synergy between marketing bubbly sugar water and wine. But you come out of Coca-Cola, and Gallo's looking for someone to take a spot, or you created that spot?
Yeah, I know. I got recruited by a headhunter to go to Gallo after I was at Coke. And I ended up working for Coke after Coke did the distribution agreement with Evian. Moved to Atlanta. Was able to work on the launch of Coke Zero in the United States, which was not
Wow.
supposed to be a success. It was not like, oh my God, come work on the next big thing. Not that at all. It was,
Really?
Courtney, I would take the Sprite job if I were you, because Coke Zero is headed toward disaster, and you're just going to end up cleaning up after it for 2 years.
So that was the water cooler conversation going on inside Coca-Cola. Like,
It was the time they were throwing a bunch of spaghetti. There was like no innovation. Then it was tons of innovation, and most of it's going to fail, and that was the time that there was tons of innovation, and most of it failed. And that one didn't.
the reformulation of Coca-Cola, is that?
No,
same
that
era?
was before that. No, Diet Coke Plus, if anybody remembers that, Coke
Yeah,
Black,
yeah,
BLAK, Tab Energy, all that stuff was
Okay,
right
that's
around the
good.
same time.
I
It
want
was
you to
the
hold those thoughts
creation
for a
of
little bit.
Gold Peak, which is still around.
Yeah.
Food service. Yeah, that was that time. Early 2000s, 2005-ish.
So why did you take it on?
I thought it was interesting. And they brought on a guy for the Sprite job. It's not like I had a choice.
Yeah, it was like, take it or leave it.
But I did think it was interesting. And I mean, they had gotten 99%. The innovation team had created it. I wasn't involved. And then when I came over, I was the first brand person. They gave it to me. They're like, here you go. Here's the product. Here's the research. Here's the plan. Here's the marketing plan. They had done a preliminary marketing plan. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Whoa, I don't get this marketing plan at all. This is not hanging together for me at all. And so I redid the marketing plan, which marketing to me is 360. So it wasn't just the promotion plan. It was a lot about the actual product and consumer target and everything. And that was a big chunk of how I started Coke Zero. That took the first couple months, and then crossed my fingers and prayed that it worked. And because we were losing distribution when I came on, they had already gotten it in like 100% of stores, like they do, especially back then. And it was starting to fall out. It was getting discontinued because it wasn't moving. And so a couple months into that, I came in and had to kind of take over that internal narrative. Wow, what do you mean you want to expand it? Why it's not even moving, Courtney? Why we're going to discontinue it? No, let me come talk to you. So a ton of it was flying around talking to different bottlers, presenting why they shouldn't discontinue yet, why it's so great, what we're going to do with it, and then recreating the wheel and actually coming up with a plan on the back end, launching it. So that was my role for a few years in building the team.
That's really interesting because it is like a major player now
Yeah.
in the world of Coca-Cola but I like this marketing 360 idea. And I think that's missed a lot. And we'll talk about, I made a note so we could bring it forward to what you're doing today.
Sure.
But, I think a lot of times, even in the sales world, where's that magic hammer, the magic nail I'm going to use and I'm going to bust through the seams. And it doesn't work that way.
Right.
You have to have
Right.
this plan, and you have to have it, the functions working. You have to be nimble, particularly now in this industry, to switch that plan. But that's an interesting thought, and I want you to carry that
Nimble
forward.
tactics, solid and enduring underneath skeleton.
Ooh, can I write that down?
Yes.
I got a recording of this. It's okay. So you get recruited from Coca-Cola to go into alcohol. Now,
Yeah.
we were talking briefly about a winery that I knew, the Fowles Winery, and I didn't get a chance to look it up, but I will. That was a Coca-Cola executive, built this beautiful winery dug in the bedrock. Looks like the Flintstones would live there. And, it was a Coke executive that thought that, wine, I can sell liquid. And so I'm going to try and do wine. And it was a failure. I don't remember what the brand was. So what was it that Coke saw in the Gallo saw in your Coke experience that made them think, gee, this girl's got it going on?
Well, at the time when I was recruited to Gallo in 2008, they were actively, Stephanie, who's a CPG marketer by training also, was actively trying to recruit more people that had CPG consumer-focused marketing experience, but could also fit in at a family-run, nimble company, not ivory tower syndrome. Gallo and the wine industry are very focused on getting out there in the field. I mean, that's what Ernest Gallo kind of built his empire based on. He's constantly out there in the field, creating incredible in-store promotions, getting to know the operators, talking to consumers, and that's absolutely what we were expected to do. So they wanted the best of CPG marketers, but also able to do that. So that's what they saw in my experience.
Well, that's, the Gallo's known for that.
Yep.
I'm not going to call it guerrilla marketing, but certainly in store. I think I told you a story about Mike Houlihan and Barefoot, which I think Gallo ended up buying. ultimately, but his lessons to get Barefoot to be where it was when Gallo bought it was literally following Ernest Gallo around. Like he'd see him in a store. And I'm like, what do you mean you see him in a store? He goes, yeah, he's fronting merchandise in a store. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yep. That's a good example.
Lots of lessons there. But so that's, now we're in corporate America, we're in alcohol sales. So you start to realize there's regulations, there's a whole different
I mean,
philosophy.
3/4 of what I knew how to do, I couldn't do in alcohol.
Yeah. Because
it's illegal. A lot of our toolbox does not apply.
Well, let me ask you this question because I went into when Cali Red from Snoop Dogg came out, and all of a sudden I'm walking down the aisle at the market and it's eye height right in the middle at $9.99, $11.99. I thought that doesn't just happen, but I thought that was illegal in the wine business as well, was to get shelf space like that through coercion.
Oh, yeah. I can't speak to how they got that shelf space. I mean, it's illegal to buy it in theory.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
But yeah, if you can show, it just forces you to get more creative. And I'm sure Coke is doing this nowadays too, as they get their shelf space impinged on by these upstarts. What is the velocity per square foot? And what is the margin per square foot that you're going to see with the extended margin given the velocity of my product? So, you make a business case out of it instead of paying for it.
Well, that must have been an interesting shock for you because the margins obviously are radically different between a water-based beverage and wine.
Well, it's funny. I think I might have told you this last time we talked. I'm not sure. But at Coke back in the day, anyway, I can't speak to now, brand people did not manage financials. We only managed top line. We only managed demand. We did not, because of the bottler situation. Yeah. So we did not get into how much extended revenue are you making. It was only sell me more cases. Just focus on driving cases. We'll manage about the costs, all that.
And was that different at Gallo?
Very much. That's one of the reasons I went. I wanted P&L ownership.
Says no one ever. So you decided that's what you wanted.
Says no one ever.
No, I mean, I'm just saying that tongue in cheek, but look, you were seeking this challenge.
I wanted
to be part of
manage my entire brand. I wanted to be able to make trade-offs and decide. Because again, I think of things 360. And I very much, once you are very clearly aligned on who is your target, what you are selling them, what is your unique point of difference, how much is the right place to charge for that consumer, for that product, with not just to cover your own costs, but what is the ideal price point given what their other trade-offs are, what their other options are, what you're trying to convey about yourself. If Evian had just looked at their costs or at tap water, they wouldn't have priced themselves where they did, $9.99 for a bottle of water in your hotel room back 20 years ago. So I'm talking about that work. And then take the rest of it out. I want the ability to make the bottle shorter or more elegant if I deem that that's the right thing to do to tell my story. And I'll take it out of somewhere else in either my brand's P&L or my portfolio if I've got the whole portfolio P&L to play with. So yes, I wanted the ability to leverage it all.
That's kind of the same thought I give people when I was doing weddings here at the Wine of the Month Club would be, take a couple bucks from the band and put it back into the wine.
Exactly.
Because I don't want to come to a wedding where the wine sucks. It's part of the experience,
You should be very clear what you stand for and what you don't. So, for example, I just saw we have 2 Starbucks in my town of 20,000 people. Cowboy town. Not exactly a white collar town at all. And only one of them can you sit down. The other one has no tables and chairs. And they just erected a third one on the way out of town.
A small town like that.
And it's built with its back to the road. We're like, what is that going to be? I can't figure out what that's going to be. And finally, they put up a Starbucks sign, and we're like, whoa, that would have been my last guess. It's like the dumpster is facing the road. Like the back of the restaurant is facing the road. And so everyone forgets this exists. And so we just discovered it the other day. You can't even walk into this Starbucks. It's only a to-go Starbucks.
Really?
So what does Starbucks stand for, really? Because I always thought it stood for that third place. The ability to go in, plug your computer in. They've gone product only.
Started.
they've gone product only. They've taken the outlets out of their stores. Yeah. Half of them you can't even sit down, let alone walk in the like. Are you selling your coffee, which anyone can copy, or are you selling the? So that's kind of what I'm talking about take out what you can, about stealing money from the band, but do not take out what you stand for. And that's what you need to be clear on.
That's an interesting thought, because you went from Gallo, which I think what you're saying in probably great advice for burgeoning marketeers in the wine trade, or even a winery owner proprietor who's trying to figure some of this out. And you know, I'm not sure there's answers to all the questions, but they don't probably usually start out with an objective and define who they are and where they're going. Right. And as I'm working on this podcast, because I love to do it, and I do it for a reason, because I want to tell the stories and I want people to understand wine in a different viewpoint. But I do have an objective with it.
Yeah.
And so I've sat down recently and decided, okay, I've got to get rid of all the fluff and laser on what I've got to do to get the objective done. But so you leave corporate America with Gallo, which has got tons of resources. You've got your own P&L. That's great. So you understand that part better in the wine trade. And you now land on your feet as an entrepreneur and as a consultant trying to do this in a very, I mean, you must run into amazingly diverse sets of individuals who are in the wine trade trying to make a name for themselves.
Yep.
It probably couldn't be worse, time to do that. And I've got stories to tell you on some people I've talked to recently. But what is the number one thing that you look at when you find either they come to you, let's go this way, either they come to you with all kinds of experience. I've been in business for 20 years. I've got this brand. It's in so many locations. I only have so many placements. And I need help because it's changed.
Yeah.
Or they're coming to you saying, I'm just getting started, help me get started, which is it both?
I work with both. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, that's what my career has taught me. So I led innovation for wine $10 and up at Gallo and invented blue sky things. So I'm very versed at that. And at other points at Gallo, I led huge portfolios of brands, some of which were not doing very well. Whether they were acquisitions that had been neglected and I needed to turn them around rapidly, substantially. I'm used to doing both. And honestly, the playbook is not that much different. So many times it's not just a Band-Aid that these brands need.
I don't think Band-Aids could possibly fix, or unless it's a serious wound that in this industry right now, it's
right.
It's a global 360, like you're saying, position in the wine trade that you've got to figure out where you belong, because you use the word innovation and it's driving me crazy. You probably see it all the time on LinkedIn and whatever else you post. And I'm not sure what it means exactly, except certainly in the Coke environment where you can create brands and test, and you've got this, whatever, Coke Black and all these other things that you tested and they worked. What does it mean to you then when we talk about innovation in the wine trade? Let's say I'm an established, I've got my $150 Napa Cab and I've got a Merlot and I've got maybe a Pinot and I throw my arms up. My DTC is good, but it's not enough, and I need help. When you use the word innovation at this point, what does that mean to you at this point?
It would depend on what you want to be when you grow up. I mean, it would really depend on your strategy, what you stand for, because not all $150 brands are the same. You've got like Ashes and Diamonds, which is super modern, sells out of their D2C and on-premise only stuff with launch parties before it even hits the market. And then you've got old school, like a mile away. Mm-hmm. It really depends on what your vision is. What I do is I get an understanding of who this brand is, who the people are behind it, the publicly facing people or the founder, if that's the case. What is kind of non-negotiable? It's like a person. Like, get to know this person, then get to know what they want to do and figure out a way to make that happen. I can tell you what to do, I guess, but I can't tell you without any kind of objection. I'm looking to achieve X. Are you looking to double? Are you looking to be back at the case volume in restaurants that you were in 2020? Are you looking to resonate more with Gen Z? Are you like, what are you exactly looking to do? You got to get a little deeper than my sales suck, fix it.
Yeah.
Um,
Do
I,
they know? Do they know at this point? And I would guess, in my experience, that they probably don't even know. Most of them are farmers,
yeah, I mean,
right?
the ones that come to me generally know. Um, Either something I say resonates with them and they will repeat that back at me. Um, or they will, it's symptoms that they know. They don't know the deep down
Hmm.
cause of it, but they're like, my customer acquisition cost for D2C has doubled. Well, who's your consumer? I don't know. I've never
No,
really
no.
talked. I mean, I could tell you right now who's buying it. Are they the person that you think should be buying it? Well, no, I can't. So then we start getting into a conversation and we get deeper on the how can we fix this systemically, not just put a band-aid on it. But it's really depends on the situation. I mean, I managed 25 brands. They all had their own path, at the same time period.
See, I'm going to guess at this is probably not probably not a huge leap in my thing, but when you ask questions like that, like who's your demographic or why your acquisition costs, where are you acquiring these people? Is it a Facebook ad or Instagram ad, or what's your ROAS on this? It's probably not well known. I mean, in the sense of they don't want to manage that every day. Now, I was in DTC, and that's all we managed or tried to manage. And I found most consultants I went through, and I'm going to sort of throw this back at you. And it's probably, I just thought about this for a second. You would be a completely different model. You weren't around when I was looking for a consultant. What I was driving me crazy, and still does, but I have my guard is up now, is I don't want to pay to educate the consultant on what I do and the trade I do, because wine is so unique. It's got such crappy margins, and there's such a small group of people that would respond to an ad that I spent money educating them.
Mm-hmm.
And here you come along and, I work for Gallo and I've done this a lot, so I understand where you're at already.
Yeah, I get it. And I was also trained as a management consultant where we'd work for one industry one day and the other industry for the other day. So I'm used to rapid learning. That does not take very long. I actually just worked for a horse care company, and now I know everything about horses. But yeah, it doesn't take very long. The thinking's similar. There's just a lot more nuance with the 3-tier beverage system, but I've been doing that my entire career. I mean, Evian had 3-tier, Coke had 3-tier. How you motivate people, how you speak to people, just understanding the economics. It's something that I know intimately.
So like, was that kitchen show, Nightmare Kitchen with
There's
Ramsay?
so many.
Yeah, there was one. He goes in there, fixes, it's a big mess, and he chews out the owners of the restaurants, and he changes
I
the
know what
name
you're
of
talking about.
kitchen, whatever it is. And here comes Courtney O'Brien, who's saying, "Hey, you got it all wrong here. First of all, we had to define who you are and what you've been trying to do. Why'd you get in this business in the first place? And now we have to shift." Do you get
what success looks like for you? Are you trying to get acquired by Gallo? Are you trying to be the next Gallo? Are you trying to sell a couple more cases to your neighbors? Like, what are you? Very different tactics depending on your goal.
That's a really interesting thought, because I get both in here. I've got the people that think that, cans, 200 ml cans are the latest, greatest thing. I had a woman in here who, thought that if she put wine in a 375, it would be the latest, greatest thing. And clearly those brands, I want to delve into this, clearly when they come and sit here, as they would come and sit with you, and their idea is to be bought by somebody, to be that $1 billion Dow, or be the $1 billion, was it Poppy drink or whatever
Happy,
it was. Those are two completely different approaches to the world.
Yeah.
And I think that version of it, where I'm trying to make $1 billion, completely removes you from what is in the can and what is in the bottle. Am I wrong?
I think of everything as 360. So what's in the bottle has to be singing the same song. It has to be telling the same story and delivering on it. But again, it depends on, I think if you want, getting it out in the open, getting it out. Sometimes you're like, I've got it in my psyche and I'm not going to say it out loud. But in reality, I do want to be the next Dow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just tell me that, right? Like, because
Yeah.
there's a lot that you need to do then. And then that's where like what you have to work with comes into it. Like, I want to be the next Dow, but here's my constraints. Here's what I've got to work with. I'm situated an hour from LA, or I'm in the middle of Indiana. This is what I make, it's on trend or it's not on trend. Does it ring true? Like, what is everything you have to work with, and what are your aspirations? It's like if I told you I wanted to be a supermodel, and like, okay, here's what you got to work with. Here's the things that might stop you. Here's where you want to go. Here's where I can get you, and here's what it's going to take. And here's the best plan that's curated for you. And this is the model to get you there, and we can prove out how it'll get you there in X amount of years.
Because you must get people that say, and this part I respect, I want to talk to you about some kind of innovation in a second, but you must get people say, look, I just want to make the best wine I can from this soil I'm given and the temperatures I'm given and the terroir, and I want to express my family's values in a bottle of wine. You take care of the rest. Does that happen?
No, because they don't come to me. I mean, they sound like they're happy with their situation, right? Like,
Except that,
people
their
only come
sales
to
have
me if
dropped.
they have problems. So if I
They all
can't,
have problems, don't they? All have problems.
I sell
now?
problems. So if they are not happy with where they're at, then they would come to me and say, I have a problem. If they're like, I just want to express myself in my family's vineyards, but I wish I was twice as big, that sort of thing, or a third again as big. What do I have to do in order to make that happen? I can see that happening. And that would be I've got this winery that's underperforming, and I'm doing way worse than my neighbors. I don't even know if I should keep it. My retail business is in the tank. My cost to run the winery every year is getting more and more per case because my cases are down. Should I keep it? Should I let it go? And what do I need to do to turn it around if I keep it? That's a project I recently worked on for a major wine company.
Wow.
And so it involves a lot of quant, modeling, understanding the competitive set, understanding of trends, and then giving them a recommendation of what they need to do to turn it around. Here's how much it would cost. Here's the break even versus selling it. Which do you want to do? They chose to sell.
You must see amazing different models so far, and just like, wait a minute, this I've never seen this before. I mean, you see there's charity-based wineries. There's, of course, the homegrown guy who made $1 billion as a surgeon or a freeway builder, and now he just wants to express his brand. And then you got corporate brands owned by Constellation or Treasury or whoever that could get to work in their own space.
And people have a lot of different goals, like you're saying. Like, they've got a lot of... Being in the wine industry is not as homogenous as it sounds. People
No, it's not at all.
Are here for a lot of different reasons.
So when it comes down to that, that's an interesting word to use, homogenous, because I think the public in general, it's wine. I love wine. I had that conversation last night at a dinner. I went to a big dinner, and the guy's like, I don't really know wine, and I don't drink it because I don't know it. Which is the consumerism part of our business, which is...
We don't like scary things or things that make us look stupid.
Always challenging. They're always challenged. Wine's always been challenged that way, has it not? It's this beverage that continues to be there after thousands of years, and it's considered...
I don't know that it's always been challenged. I mean, you look at I come from Italian heritage. My grandparents were not the most sophisticated people. He was a plumber. She worked in a paper factory, and they quit to have babies in upstate New York. But they always had wine on they had Ernest and Julio Rosso or whatever, jug on the counter. They didn't feel intimidated by it. You look back at the way Italians and French use table wine. It is not intimidating. It is an agricultural product that's consumed on a regular basis. And you can buy a really fancy version for special occasions, and you can buy a regular table version for every night drink on your porch. So that's kind of how I think people in that generation, this would be like what we call the greatest generation in the US. But the further you get away from it, I think the more kind of foreign it felt, the more, you get away from your immigrant roots in traditionally wine drinking countries, the more kind of foreign and scary and confusing you can see it as. Olive oil is having a little bit of the same problem. Actually, talking to an olive oil producer who Italians use it in everything. Like my grandma would put olive oil in a pan and then figure out what she was going to make for dinner. That's not the case with a lot of other countries of origin. And now that we're a couple generations in, they're having trouble resonating, and I think it's somewhat similar. And then you got all these other forces in the United States that are very elitist about wine, and wine is not all the same. You don't need to be a sommelier and drink those types of wines in order to enjoy whatever level wine you want to have tonight with dinner, just like my grandmother did. She didn't get flustered about it.
No, but that's an interesting thought. We know this, but we had wine in our house all the time. That's my dad was in the business. But I wonder if that's what this generation is trying to say, and they haven't really been able to articulate it. They just are talking about we need to innovate in the wine trade. I read a lot of magazines from the 70s to see if I can glean what was
from
being
the
thought
70s.
of.
Interesting.
This patch, Les Amis de Vin, had a magazine. It was precursed to all of the things you read today. And it's, the articles are pretty similar. The language is a little bit different, but, it's a bunch of wine enthusiasts getting together, having wine and talking about it.
Yeah.
And that's not the entire group of wine drinkers, right?
Not by a long shot.
Your family was like that. But is that what they're trying to do, is to indoctrinate, let's just take America for a second, and using the wrong words like innovation to get our tables, our regular American dinner table, to have a glass of wine on it? I don't think that's the case, but it certainly would be a good idea.
I think the wine industry has never been on the cutting edge of marketing. I think it's been product first and a lot of industries are. I told you I had an offer from Disney and I didn't take it. The reason I didn't take it is because entertainment is product first. You don't hear about the brilliant Disney marketers. You hear about the brilliant Disney creators and producers and the people that make that product. It's a product first industry. Yeah. That's why I wanted to work in food and beverage, because outside of wine and other kind of artistic products, it is a marketing focused industry. Mm-hmm. Wine has never been a marketing focused industry. It has been I want to express this. It's an agricultural product, just like beef is not a marketing focused industry. It's arguably, on the lower end, a bit of a commodity. So how do you create brands becomes even more interesting, because it's all creativity and human psyche, especially on the lower end, with not that much difference between some of these liquids. So I think the people, and when I was leading innovation at Gallo, my charge, the what that meant was create blue sky, new brands, new to the world brands. This is not a line extension. And what that could consist of was up for discussion. It could consist of, like I said, 360 decisions. This liquid, this country of origin, this bottle, this positioning, this name, this consumer target, this label, like and we're going to launch it in this way, in this channel. All of those things were up for discussion. But I think innovation is such a broad word. When people say the wine industry needs to innovate, we are selling things in general in the same 5-serving glass, breakable, unopenable by your hands vessel that we did hundreds of years ago.
That's true, but why? I don't think it's a lack of interest in not doing it.
It had a reason, right? It was a production decision for the best aging, but Sauvignon Blanc does not need to be served in that aging vessel.
How about the recipe I just saw the other day where you put jalapenos in your salad?
I know. People are talking about that.
But wait a minute, I'm going to freeze there, because I've noticed the can section. I've had the pleasure and the privilege to taste the same vintage wine out of a can. I've had the pleasure and the privilege to taste the same vineyard's grapes that made a nice Pinot Noir from the Central Coast and its non-alc counterpart. And the can section of my local markets is shrinking. And the non-alc, I don't. I'm talking about innovation now. We're focusing on those two major parts of innovation that are coming out.
Non-alc and
non-alc.
can.
Non-alc has been around. Rodney Strong's been making non-alc Ariel for like, I don't know, since '89 or something. It's not new.
It's new in mass though, and I think it's new to the current group that's discovering it.
Would you recommend a winery, because this is one of the trends that we're seeing right now, that you should maybe look into a non-alc version of what you're doing? Is it part of your innovation, or is that sort of contingent?
You're going to hate this. It all depends on what you want to achieve, who you are, what you have to work with, and who you're going after. All of those tactics, like when I work with clients, as soon as we sign and I give them a share drive to start dumping stuff, they start sending me, should I do this? Should I do that? Here's my thoughts on TikTok. Should I launch a non-alc? I'm like, I'm just going to file these. We're just going to let it sit there, get it all out. And then we're going to start with the basics. Who are you? What do you want to achieve? What do we have to work with? Who's the consumer? What's the trend? What are they drinking? And by the time we get to looking at those, not that this takes forever, but when we get to looking at those emails, they answer their own questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, yeah, okay, this looks kind of silly now that we've decided X, Y, and Z, because obviously I would or would not do that. So it just writes its own. Not every brand should be doing non-alc. Absolutely not. But
no, I mean, who's that talking to?
I don't think every brand should be doing anything other than, adhering to laws.
I was talking to a chateau in Long de Pomerol about this. He goes, yeah, we're thinking about going non-alc. I'm like, what? I mean, what value is that going to come to a chateau that you can see Petrus from to say we're non-alc?
Entirely?
No, but
launching one.
It takes a lot of effort to produce a non-alc wine and then go market it, because
it sure does.
It's a whole new brand now, right? So let's talk about that for a second. You're a brander. Is that not starting over if you decide to put it in a can or is there any carryover from Chateau XYZ in their non-alc? Is there like, I drink Chateau XYZ, so I think now I'm going to try the non-alc. There can't be any crossover.
So it gets to what the definition of a brand is, which I know there's a lot of, I think the vast majority of wines out there are products, not brands.
Yeah.
My definition of a brand is something that transcends the actual product. Like, it's more than just this right here. It's an idea that's bigger than any given product. And to me, my litmus test is it makes me want to quit my job and go start 5 companies to deliver on that idea. Mm-hmm. And when it really becomes a brand, that's my tickling of an idea of a brand. When it really becomes a brand is when other people can repeat that. When other people say, oh, XYZ brand, yeah, that's about this. And it's not just, oh yeah, that's about a red wine from whatever street, right? It's not just about the product, it's about a bigger idea. So if you look at it that way, there aren't very many brands that Chateau XYZ, it stands for this in my mind. So if you look at your question through that lens, does it stand for anything? The vast majority of wine labels do not stand for anything beyond that actual product in people's minds. And so if you do, like say if you're Whispering Angel, maybe it stands for premium, reminds me of Miami Beach, kind of like a celebrities. I've seen it served at these hot hotels. Or it's Brad and Angelina's brand, and then they put one of those in a can. Yes, I think your equity carries over.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not, then you might as well just name it ABC, because it's, unless your guests at your property are, a lot of them are asking for a non-alc option because they're not enjoying themselves with the rest of their party there. And it's kind of more of a tactical decision to provide something for them, so that mixed parties will start, attending. I don't know that you want to put a lot of effort into creating another sub-brand unless it really helps deliver on your goals.
That's the key, right? Because if clearly in this case, it would not have happened. He's just trying to build his regular wine brand. And now you're going to, there's no, like I said, there's no Venn diagram in a brand like that. Certainly, like you said, I like the word equity in that Whispering Angel example. They would carry over because they would see the Whispering Angel logo and they go, it's Whispering Angel non-alc or can or whatever you're doing. But for the most part, much like podcasts, actually, a lot of the pundits in the podcast world saying, hey, if you have a business and you don't have a podcast, you're wasting your time. How are you going to tell people about who you are? And it's like, yeah, but podcasts aren't an ancillary part of your business. It itself is a brand that you've got to go figure out how to market on its own. You can't just...
Absolutely. It's a time-consuming top
Yes.
of funnel. I just said no to starting a new one with someone. I'd like to. I like talking. I like hosting. I'd like to do this stuff all day. But it's a top of funnel marketing tool.
Right.
It takes its own set of marketing. It's a marketing tool you have to market. And it's time consuming, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's something that once you start, you should really keep going. It's not like, you just like not going to feel like doing it for a couple of weeks.
It's not a campaign. It's a commitment.
Right.
I'm committed to it. You said something interesting about this, and I'm sure you get this all the time, and your response is sometimes probably roll your eyes or raise your eyebrows. Either way, is you said it earlier that as soon as you sign up a winery or DTC company to do this, they start sending you their TikTok stuff and their Instagram, and you get the links, and you're looking at, and that's pretty granular thing to worry about at that point, is it not? Like, I'm not so sure I need to analyze your TikTok feed at this moment because you've been just playing shotgun, approach to all this, and now we need to sit down and focus on the idea, and then let's adjust TikTok and Facebook. And correct me if I'm wrong in what you tell your people, but my experience with doing all this was, it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. Are you young / old enough to know of Bewitched, the TV show?
Yeah, I remember Bewitched.
Okay. So Larry Tate was the owner of the PR agency, right? The advertising agency. And there's a very slow process then. You would go to see Larry Tate and Darren Stevens, and he'd have his easel up there, and he'd go through the pitch, and then you would approve the pitch, and then you wouldn't talk. They wouldn't see each other again, because that was the way they used to do PR. And that was the way you marketed stuff. It was very slow and very cause and effect. Now, like, you can start tomorrow. You can start in 15 minutes. You don't even need, you can have a website in an hour.
Yeah.
So it's a different environment, and you can get lost in the minutia.
Yes.
Trying to figure this out.
Yes.
And then realize, it really isn't that effective.
You could spend a lot of money very quickly.
Yes. And then go, I didn't really get anywhere, and there's no brand building. So how are you talking to people? Where are you finding yourself being moved into when it comes to telling people about your wares? I see your post books. You're interested.
Oh, my personal marketing?
Yes.
I do the same.
No trade secrets here.
I do the same thing I do for my brands. So, I said to my husband when I left corporate and started my own brand, I'm like, there's a lot of the best marketers I know don't say anything about themselves. They don't market themselves. And then now that I'm on, now with my nose to the grindstone, working 24/7 for one company, I notice all these other people marketing themselves, but their backgrounds are just not there. Like, do they really have that experience?
No.
What would happen if I combined those two things? And so you really have to put your money where your mouth is if you are selling marketing and you are not good at marketing yourself. Like, you just have to be. You can't be like a first grade teacher who can't spell, right? Like, you have to put yourself in there as a product. People compliment me on my marketing. I'm like, what choice do I have? Not only do I believe in it, and of course I'm going to take advantage of it myself, but if I didn't do it well, that would be a horrible look for my business, right? So I do the same thing. What do I stand for? And that's why I love talking to people about their careers too, because it's the same thing I did to myself. What do I have to work with? What are my pros? What are my cons? Who are my competitors? What are their advantages versus me? Where are my target audience giving their attention? A lot of them on LinkedIn. I sell B2B services. Mm-hmm. And what do I want to be talking about? That's way down the line. What do I want to be talking about? How do I talk about it? Do I make a video? Do I put that video on Instagram? That's like 8 decisions deep. I don't need to be worrying about the video for Instagram when I haven't even decided what I want to build, who I want to talk to, and how I'm going to say it.
Can't be the shoe man's son has no shoes.
Right.
Or in my case, the CPA's husband's taxes are always late.
I have a contractor for a husband, and our roof has been unfinished for 5 years.
Okay, that's hilarious. Well, it's an interesting point because, and I think part of this is generational. And you and I probably are not used to talking about ourselves because you want to do the job and do the job right, and it's about the job. But that's
a lot
not
of the best
case.
people are just like, I'm just going to keep doing the best work, and people are going to notice me because I am just
and
doing
it's
the best
not that way, particularly with social networking, which is a self-branding tool in the first place. As always was. It's very funny because when I bring in younger generations here, and they just would have all these ideas, and I was like, you guys, one of the things you got to remember about social networking, it hasn't changed since it started, which is one person tells 10, and those 10 tell 10, and those tell 10, and all of a sudden you've told 100,000 people, and you've got to remember that's the point. It's not about raising your flag and talking about how great you are all the time, but then you're right. If you don't have the muscle behind what you're talking about, the experience to say I'm qualified to help you here, then it's just flag waving.
People are not going to find out about you just because you're doing great work inside corporation, and somebody tells somebody, and somebody tells somebody. People are too busy with their own stuff.
Yes, you have to go to them.
Yes.
Well, you're doing a great job, but we're already at 51 minutes, which is unbelievable.
Thank you. This is fun.
And I hope we can do it again. There's more to talk about, and as I peel back the things you're writing and talking about, I'd like to bring you back on in a few months and see what has moved, what's changed. Something will have changed by then, as we know. Before we get off, there was one thing that I wanted to bring about innovation, and I call it experiential innovation. Maybe that's not my own word, but when we were in Bordeaux last May, actually, it's been a year already. We went to Chateau Bailly and had an incredible experience with Veronique Sanders Van Beek, the director there. But what she showed us, and this goes back to your storytelling, we went into their new winery, and it's phenomenally thought through. And so if I'm a visitor and I see this and I'm explained why this was designed the way it was designed, I'll never forget that.
Right.
I'll never forget that experience. And wine has always been that. Always. It's not an experience to say, I've got this for $5 on the internet. That's not an experience. And that's the part about the history of wine that I don't think it can be shaken or needs to be diverted or changed. It'll always be the bedrock of the proper glass of wine that somebody comes to and says, wow, this is something special. Tell a story.
I bristle when you say the word proper.
And what are you meaning? What? Bristle?
I think it's subjective. I think a lot of people that love wine and wine people, we did research on this. Almost all of us, because I'm one of them, have had their aha moment, their moment that they can remember that they first got it about wine, their epiphany.
Right. Sure.
And I could tell you mine. I bet you could tell me yours. I mean, I'm sure you should have many, but like your first one that sparked your love. Not everybody's like that. Not everybody is like us and is going to be a wine geek and wants to go to the chateau. And I think the wine drinking potential population and casual wine drinking population may be fine with a $5 glass on the internet. Because people feel equally. Go ahead.
I'm not trying to cast that wide net in that regard, because I think anybody that drinks a really good glass of wine at least will acknowledge it's really good. And I'll give you an example. When I was with some friends in Napa for the first time, now these people, they criticize everything I do now, but before we had gone to Napa, this is about 5 or 7 years ago, we were sitting at Clos Pegase, one of the old vintage wine estates properties, and we have two 2014 Cabernets, two different vineyards. Actually, one was probably the blend, and one was probably vineyard specific. And my friend said, right in my face, my friend of 50 years said, I think you're full of shit. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you're full of shit the way you guys use those expressions, and you talk about this, talk about that. It doesn't mean anything. I said, okay, let me ask you this question. You've got two Cabernets here. They're both the same grape, same winemaker, two different reasons they're in the bottle. Do they taste different to you? He said, yeah. I said, you're on your way. You just started.
Yeah.
You didn't have to explain it, but you noticed the difference.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that everybody feels that way. So that and that kind of circled all the way back 360 to the conversation about your Italian family sitting with a glass of wine on the table every night. It wasn't about swirling and sniffing and trying to dissect it.
Right.
It was
They
part
had
of the
no prayer of
culture.
ever going to a chateau. They've never even traveled.
They've never done that, right?
Right. And there's, if you want to sell volume, again, it goes back to what your goal is. You can
Yes.
be as artistic as you want. If you just need to know what you want to achieve, how much you're going to spend on getting there, and how fast you want to get there.
I can't wait to hear in a few months the sort of the percentage of people that have come to you with their different problems, the types of problems. Eventually, you're going to
It's so fun.
a bucket of one kind of problem, and a bucket of another kind of problem,
Yep.
and a different type of client, and it'll change. I think every 6 months it's going to be changing.
There is no shortage of problems in the world. There
Yes.
might be, layoffs and tariffs, but there's no shortage of problems.
Such a pleasure to have on the show, and I hope we can see each other soon. You're in Washington?
No, I'm in California.
Oh, San Francisco area.
Yep.
And how often do you get over to the Valley?
Napa Valley? I was
Yeah.
just there for the last 3 days. I just got back.
We're up all the time. I'm going to give you some notice if we happen to be able to grab a glass or a lunch or something. We'd love to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Paul.
Cheers.